Welcome to 21st Sports Recap and Reaction for the Miami Dolphins at the Buffalo Bills in their Week 9 matchup played November 8th, 2015. We're going to go over the scores and the stats and give our breakdown and analysis. So starting off in the first quarter, Tannehill fumbled the ball out of bounds out of the end zone for a safety, and that was just over 3 minutes into the game, and it was 2-0 Buffalo over Miami. So that was the first score. They would then have to punt the ball to Buffalo after the safety, and Buffalo would take the ball and go 80 yards in 5 plays, capped off by a big touchdown run by LaShawn McCoy. He went 48 yards for the touchdown. Carpenter hit the extra point, and it was 9-0 Bills over the Dolphins. That would be it for the first quarter. Then in the second quarter, with about 11.5 minutes left before halftime, Lamar Miller would punch it in from a yard out after a 85-yard drive that went 9 plays in about 4.5 minutes. Franks added the extra point, and it was now back to a 2-point game with the score Buffalo 9, Miami 7. But then with about 7 minutes left before halftime, Dan Carpenter hit a 43-yard field goal to make it 12-7 Bills over the Fins. And with 2.5 left before halftime, Karlos Williams took it in for an 11-yard touchdown run. Carpenter added the extra point, and it was now 19-7 at halftime with the Bills in the lead by 12. So then in the third quarter, Miami would take their first possession, 80 yards in 9 plays, eating up almost 5 minutes of the first possession of the second half, and Lamar Miller punched it in once again for a 1-yard touchdown run. Franks kicked the extra point, and it was now a 5-point game with the score Buffalo 19, Miami 14. But then what would end up happening after both teams, we had the punt by Buffalo. Miami would get the ball back, and they were driving, and they were up into Buffalo territory at the 42, and Tannehill was sacked by Hughes. He forced the fumble, he recovered it, and so that would lead Buffalo to a touchdown 3 plays later as Sammie Watkins caught a 44-yard touchdown pass by Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor airing it out, and Watkins went to the end zone. Carpenter kicked the extra point, and it was now 26-14 Buffalo as the Bills now back up by 12 again, and it really seemed to just put momentum firmly in their corner. That would be the score after 3, and in the fourth, with about 8.5 minutes left in this game, Karlos Williams breaks a 38-yard touchdown run. Carpenter adds the extra point, and it was now 33-14 as the Bills were starting to run away with this one. Franks would add a 48-yard field goal with about 4 minutes left for the Dolphins to make it 33-17, and that would be the final score as the Bills hold on to win this one, and they're now at 500 at 4-4 on the season, getting a big win against their AFC East rival. They're 2-3 at home there in Ralph Wilson Stadium. The Miami Dolphins are now 3-5 on the season, 2-3 on the road. They now lose 2 games in a row after having won 2 games in a row after Carpenter took over. So with the new coach is now 2-2, as the Dolphins are on a little bit of a slide here, and they lose a real big game against the Bills. This is a big win for Buffalo. They're in the AFC East. And Tyrod Taylor, he didn't have a lot of attempts, but he completed 11 of 12 passes, 181 yards, and a touchdown. He also had 10 carries for 44 yards. LaShawn McCoy had 112 yards off of 16 carries and a touchdown. And Karlos Williams, 9 carries for 110 yards and 2 touchdowns. And through the air, Sammie Watkins, as he had been taking some criticism due to his ankle injury, but he came out there and he showed improved with 8 receptions for 168 yards, career high, and a touchdown. And for the Dolphins, Tannehill, 27 for 36, 309 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Lamar Miller, 12 carries for 44 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he also was the leading receiver with 7 receptions for 97 yards, as he had 141 total yards on the game. And Kenny Stills, 3 receptions for 74 yards. Jarvis Landry, 11 receptions for 69 yards. He also had 4 carries for 18 yards in this game, as he ended up with 97 yards. And he also had a pass attempt, 1 for 1 for 9 yards as well for Jarvis Landry. And for the kickers in this game, Dan Carpenter was perfect, 1 for 1 on the field goals, 4 for 4 on the extra points. And Franks was also perfect, 1 for 1 on the field goals, 2 for 2 on the extra points. And on defense, Hughes, 2 sacks and a forced fumble for Buffalo. Jones had a sack for Miami, as well as Phillips and Ndamukong Suh. Then we look at the total first downs for each of these teams. 29 for Miami, 18 for Buffalo. On third down, though, the Bills were 8 of 13, 61% conversion rate on third down for the Buffalo Bills. 4 for 9 for Miami, as they were 44% on third downs. Total net yards, 420 for the Bills, 397 for Miami. On the ground, 266 net yards for the Bills versus 106 for Miami. So they had more than double, almost triple the amount of rushing yards. But through the air, 291 for Miami netted. Tannehill sacked twice. He lost 27 yards on those 2 sacks. Tyrod Taylor was sacked 3 times, losing 27 yards. The Bills had 154 total net passing yards. When we look at the penalties, and the Bills, despite 13 penalties, they still ran away with this game. But that's what kind of made it close there early on. But 13 penalties, 94 yards against Buffalo. 8 penalties for 62 yards against Miami. And Miami fumbled the ball 3 times, but they only lost it once. And in the red zone, 1 for 2 for Buffalo, 50%. 2 for 4 for Miami. They were 50% as well. Time of possession, 31 minutes, 13 seconds for the Bills. 28 minutes, 47 seconds for the Dolphins. So the Buffalo Bills, they come away with the big win here in this game. And they were rolling early on. I mean, they were up by 12 at halftime. But really, the difference, I felt like, it seemed like they had this game from the jump. That safety early on. They seemed to have, momentum on their side, even though Miami was making it interesting at different points. But when Hughes got that sack and, Tannehill fumbled, then they ended up getting that touchdown after that with the 44-yard pass from Taylor to Watkins, and that put them back up by 12. That really seemed to kind of cement it, and then really drove it home with that big run by Karlos Williams, that 38-yard touchdown run, and that was pretty much it right there, as Miami just could not crawl out of that hole that they had found themselves in, as they had, brought it back within 5 on their first possession of the second half, but then fallen right back down by 2 scores, and they weren't able to make this one interesting after that point. Although, early on, like I said, when it was a 2-point game, 9-7 in the second, but it was really all Buffalo in this game. They played really good on defense, and especially with the way they were shutting down the running game of Miami. Miller was coming, they had been having more success on the ground, but even Miller ended up being the leading receiver too. So although Tannehill did have 309 passing yards, no touchdowns, and they only had the 2 touchdowns, on the ground there by Miller. Of course, those were, 1-yard touchdown runs, but Tyrod Taylor coming up very accurate, making clutch plays, and especially on third down, the Bills were coming up big on third downs, expending their drives, and actually with their success on third down, with the 8 first downs on third down, almost half of their first downs came on third down, so they were really clutch. They came up with the plays when they needed it the most. I know that's kind of cliche, but that is what happened in this game. But let me know what you think in the comments section below. Definitely interested to read your thoughts and opinions. Thank you very much for listening. It is greatly appreciated. I hope you're having a good week and had a good day and are having a great weekend, and enjoy all the sports.